Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're just going to wait a few more seconds for people to come on in, get comfortable, and get ready to learn with us. Okay, welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you with us. Thank you for joining Economic Mobility Alliance Ohio for today's webinar, Is Poverty a Policy Choice? My name is Travis Spees, and I proudly serve as the Applied Research Director at the Women's Fund of the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. And today, I am happy to be your host for this very important webinar. We are the Economic Mobility Alliance Ohio, an alliance of state and local advocacy, research, workforce development, health and human service organizations, and funders committed to ending the system of disincentives to work known as the benefits cliff that trap Ohioans in poverty. As a collaborative, we raise awareness and advocate for positive solutions to mitigate and eliminate benefits cliffs, to reduce disincentives to work, and create a more seamless pathway to economic stability for all Ohioans. The Alliance leadership is comprised of the agencies you see here, and we are deeply grateful for our leaders who saw a need to advocate for and develop policies to support economic mobility for Ohio's working families. We encourage you to take action with us. Become a partner and attend our monthly meetings, sign up for our monthly newsletter, and join EMAO webinars, events, and attend our next Advocacy Day. Please visit our website and learn more about our policy priorities and ways to stay engaged with the Alliance. Now, before I get to the discussion, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items. We are recording today's webinar, and we will make the recording and slides available later. We encourage you to ask questions, share resources, and comment in the chat. The great Jason Klukbarani is on deck and here to help us sort through the discussion in the chat. So please join the dialogue and use your social networks and platforms to educate others. Again, I'd like to personally ask you to please consider joining EMAO and the Alliance partners. Check out our website for more information. Since last week, 42 million Americans and 1 in 5 children have been impacted by the halt of SNAP benefits due to the federal government shutdown. For Ohioans, that means 1.4 million residents and families are forced to make even tougher choices to make ends meet. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program is a U.S. federal program that provides monthly food benefits to low-income individuals and families. Benefits are loaded onto an electronic benefits transfer card, which works like a debit card and can be used at most grocery stores and farmers markets to purchase most food items. As part of the Food Stamps Act of 1964, SNAP benefits were signed into order by President Lyndon B. Johnson as part of the War on Poverty and policies designed to give low-income households a hand up and lift people out of poverty. Today's presenters represent Ohio's 48 community action agencies and 3 statewide associations. Community action agencies across the U.S. serve 39.5 million Americans living in poverty. And for 60 years, CAAs have supported state and federal policies that give those in poverty a hand up and promote self-sufficiency. So please let me introduce you to our speakers. First, we'll hear from Bo Chilton, President and CEO of Impact Community Action, one of the leading human service agencies fighting poverty in Franklin County. With an annual operating budget of $10 million, an agency budget of $51 million, a staff of 106 employees who serve over 30,000 customers annually, Impact is on the front line of the war on poverty and is dedicated to fighting poverty by providing hope-inspiring help and real opportunities for self-sufficiency. Next, Yvonne Cherell is a passionate advocate for social justice, equity, and inclusion, who is committed to empowering Ohioans through education and advocacy. As the first CEO of the Ohio Urban Community Action Network, Yvonne leads a network of 10 urban community action agencies representing 16 counties, serving over half of Ohio's population living at or below the federal poverty level. And Megan Riddlebarger currently serves as the executive director of the Corporation for Ohio Appalachian Development. Riddlebarger works every day to improve the quality of life in Appalachian, Ohio, by leading a team of dedicated professionals who reach children, families, and seniors with a variety of supports, including education and meaningful work, as well as numerous energy-saving programs and services. And the anchor of our talented group will bridge all of this together. President and CEO of Miami Valley Community Action Partnership, Erin Jeffries. Erin joined Miami Valley Community Action Partnership's team in March 2020 after a career in community development and grant administration at the City of Dayton, Ohio. Erin is a proven leader whose experience in community development and grants management uniquely positions where she is taking Miami Valley Community Action Partnership to its next phase of growth. And with that, I will turn it over to Bo.
Thank you, Travis. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you to the Economic Mobility Alliance organization and the coalition that we have. Thank you, Yvonne, for inviting me to be part of this. I have been looking forward to having this conversation and hearing from all of my colleagues on what we see as how the call to action to address. And I'm sorry, can you see my screen, my PowerPoint that says Impact Community Action?
Yep, you are all good.
Okay, great. All right. So just a little bit of let me go back. A little bit of background on community action. So as was alluded to earlier, we were created in 1964 as part of Lyndon B. Johnson's vision for a great society and his declaration of the war on poverty. There are 1,100 community action agencies across the nation and 48 here in the state of Ohio who collectively serve all 88 counties. And that is the community action network that makes up the Ohio Association of Community Action Agencies. Additionally, we have some subgroups within that. OUCAN, the Ohio Urban Community Action Network, is made up of the 10 urban agencies here in Ohio. And so those are organizations that are addressing the specific needs of the urban population. You'll hear from Yvonne Cherell, our executive director, who leads it very capably. Then you have COAD, the Coalition of Ohio Appalachian Development, I believe. Megan will tell us more about that and how we all work together to address the specific needs of the populations that we serve. So here at Impact Community Action, our mission is to fight poverty by providing hope, inspiring help, and real opportunities for self-sufficiency. We envision a community where everyone has the opportunity to prosper. We are the wealthiest country in the world, and there's no reason why we should have the forms of poverty that we do. For Impact Community Action, we have an annual operating budget of $25 million now, so it's been in flux. When we first started in 2019, we had an annual operating budget of about $10 million. Through the pandemic relief, we grew by leaps and bounds to a height in 2022 of $90 million. As those pandemic relief dollars kind of expire, we're coming back down to more of a normalized level, and we sit at $25 million annual operating budget now. We have 100 employees who serve over 30,000 low-income families each year in Franklin County. We are the designated CAA for Franklin County. We serve people who are at 200% of the federal poverty level. And with some programs, we're able to even serve up to 80% AMI. That is with some of our housing programs. The last thing that I'll say in terms of our history is there's a number of corresponding programs that came out of that war on poverty. You had the creation of the federally qualified health centers. You had the creation of legal aid. So you had all of these organizations, policies, and programs being developed to address the issue of poverty. Again, I really credit Lyndon B. Johnson for saying we are the wealthiest country in the world. There's no reason why people should go hungry. There's no reason why people should not have health care. And so that was a policy decision to create community action in the first place. So when we ask the question, is poverty a policy decision? It absolutely is. We would not have been created had there not been a policy to say we're going to fight poverty, we're going to address it, and we believe that the federal government has an obligation to do so. Something I want to show just for information purposes. This is taken from the Department of Development. It is the population projections for Ohio. What you see here is any of the areas that are in blue, the darker the blue, the greater the population growth. This is where we know over the next 25 years where the population is going to grow and where it's going to shrink. And in some places by more than 30%. So all of the areas that you see in blue is where you see the population growing. So here in Central Ohio, population is outpacing our ability to build housing. You also see where the population loss is coming from. And you see some very dark red counties, particularly in the Appalachia area. So this is something that we have to factor in. And I have some ideas about that. So hopefully when we get to the question and answer, we could talk a little bit more about it. But I think it's important for us to have kind of a level set of what's happening here in Ohio, because I believe that we're not being factual in telling people some of the challenges that we have and really figuring out, well, what are the solutions? Instead, we will often use wedge issues, speak to people's fears and socially conservative views, and they will vote against their own economic interests. And that's a lot of what I see happening here in Ohio and in places around the nation. I am glad to say, based on some of the differences in the election results, I think that people are kind of waking up to the fact that in the polls show that we're kind of going down the wrong track with some of the things that we've instituted. You know, the idea that we're cutting Medicaid and then even here in Ohio, making people work for their health insurance. You know, that's wrong track. The idea that we would make the tax cuts from 2017 permanent, then taking off revenue that could be used to help people, that's a policy decision. And not only is that unfortunate in terms of the making the tax increases permanent, that then means that we're now creating even greater to our deficit, adding to the debt, and having an imbalanced budget. So all of these things, and the people who claim to be conservative but voted for that permanent tax increase while making program cuts on the backs of the poor, is what led us to really try and reignite the phrase from the Poor People's Campaign. We need to fight poverty, not the poor. So just talking a little bit more about this, you know, the fact that we're even having a debate about whether or not we should extend the affordable healthcare tax credits, whether or not the Medicaid tax cuts should go forth or not. The fact that we're having that debate is somewhat disheartening in the first place. Because as I said earlier, we are the wealthiest nation in the world, some say in the history of civilization. We are the only industrialized nation, developed nation that does not provide some form of universal health care. I don't think that most people really understand that, and let that sink in. We're talking about North Korea, China, Germany. All of these countries provide some form of universal health care. Now, there may be differences in the quality of it, but they do provide it. We are the only country who does not. There's something wrong with that. That's a policy choice. So we talked about the cuts to Medicaid, the cuts to having people to SNAP, people starving. That's a policy choice. At a time in which we're doing a bailout for Argentina to the tune of $40 billion, while our farmers and others are hurting. Those are policy choices. When we talk about tax policy, I talked about the 2017 tax cuts made permanent. Really recommend everyone check out a documentary called We're Not Broke. It really breaks down how is it that you could have Amazon making billions in profit in a single year and pay 0% in taxes. Like, how does that even happen? And what that documentary will show you is there is a statutory tax rate, and then there is an effective tax rate. So that a lot of the profits get put in tax shelters and tax havens, like the Grand Cayman Islands and things of that nature. And the effective tax rate ends up being zero. So you have people, corporations, and others who are making millions and billions of dollars and not contributing to the very system that allowed them to make that type of wealth. To me, that's a policy decision. When we look at housing here in Central Ohio, this is something more germane to the work that we're doing in Franklin County. Our population is growing, as you saw from the chart, at a rate in which our housing production cannot keep pace. We're falling behind, and it's putting pressure on our housing market. What that has turned into, Franklin County has one of the highest rates of evictions, one of the highest eviction rates per capita in the country. That surprises a lot of people, but when you look at it per capita, we have one of the highest eviction rates in the country. When we had the emergency rent assistance money, we were able to help people stay safe in their homes. The thing that I really am disappointed with our state legislature is that the emergency rent assistance program had a provision whereby if 75% of that funding would have been used, the other 25% we could have pulled down and used for affordable housing. We could have done reconstruction and build new housing at a time when we desperately need it. I thought it was very short-sighted of our state legislature to leave all of that money on the table, but they did so because, again, policy decision. They thought there was too much money out here in the economy and that people weren't working. So they said, we do not want the money. Do not draw it down. It's time for people to go back to work. And fortunately, and to his credit, Governor DeWine said we had 152 million already sitting here that we had drawn down. And some were advocating to send that back. He said, we're not sending it back. And they did reallocate it to those who were able to spend down those dollars. So at least we could keep that money here in Ohio. So the documentary We're Not Broke really talks about tax policy. The other one that I'm going to call out is you must watch the documentary The Dark Money Game. You must watch that if you have not seen it. It has two segments, one called Ohio Confidential that puts a spotlight here in Ohio and the whole pay-to-play system. It gives you background on what happened when our former Speaker of the House went to prison and others around House Bill 6 and all of the things that happened around that. They gave credit to the 2010 Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, as being the thing that opened it up for dark money and the super PACs. So that's a must watch. The other thing that I'm going to encourage is the other documentary it's Dark Money Game. It's two parts. Ohio Confidential is the one that puts a spotlight on Ohio. And then the second one is called The Wealth of the Wicked. And it basically shows how there was this alliance between the Christian right and the wealthy elites and corporations who wanted to get the tax cuts permanent, and the Christian right who wanted to get Roe versus Wade overturned. And so there was this alliance. And what we see today is they did have an effective effort to take control of the Supreme Court and to get those policies enacted. So watch that. It helps us see kind of what's happening. I've always talked about there's three kind of people in this world: those who are in the game, those who are on the sidelines watching the game, and those who don't even know the game's being played. So I advocate for you to watch the Dark Money Game so that you can see what game is being played, and then we can come up with effective strategies to counter what we're seeing. So with that, I've shared a lot of information. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm going to kick it to my colleague, Yvonne Cherell, who serves as our Executive Director of Ohio Urban Community Action Network.
Thank you, Bo. I don't know how I'm going to follow that because that's a lot of great information. But I want to say again, thank you to everyone on the call today, and thank you for the Economic Mobility Alliance for hosting this very important conversation. Again, my name is Yvonne Cherell. I serve as the CEO for the Ohio Urban Community Action Network, also known as OUCAN. OUCAN is comprised of the 10 urban community action agencies in the state of Ohio. We provide services for 16 counties and about half of Ohioans who are living at or below the poverty level. And our mission of our organizations is to empower Ohio's urban community action agencies through education, networking, and advocating for policies that alleviate poverty. And I'm so proud to share with you today that we are also celebrating a monumental year. This year, OUCAN turns 40 years, and this is a great celebration of breaking the cycle of poverty in Ohio. I just want to underscore a few things, historical moments and facts Bo shared, and really kind of double down on the influence and the power of community action agencies, particularly here in Ohio. So as Bo mentioned, community action agencies serve across the U.S. serve about 39.5 million Americans living in poverty. And for 60 years, CAAs have supported both federal and local policies that give people in poverty a hand up and not just a handout. We promote self-sufficiency. And so in Ohio, we're very lucky to be led by three powerful associations. The larger association that is comprised of the 48 community action agencies that Bo mentioned is led by Jason Smith, Executive Director for the Ohio Association of Community Action Agencies. And then of course, Megan Riddlebarger, who you will hear from a little later, the Executive Director for the Community Cooperation of Appalachian Development. And they provide direct services for Ohio's Appalachian counties in early education, AmeriCorps seniors, home weatherization, energy efficiency, and so much more. And then, as Bo mentioned before, OUCAN is absolutely proud to be the place for Ohio's urban community action agencies to learn, to connect, and advocate, and collectively break the cycle of poverty in Ohio. So the question, while we're here, why are we here? The question, like Bo said, this is a little offensive. Is poverty a policy choice? Let me just start by saying that I, Yvonne Cherell, also known as YC, believe 1000% that poverty is first and foremost a cash and an equitable economic building issue. Let me repeat that for you. Poverty, first and foremost, is a cash. We need money. People have things to buy. People need to feed their families. They need to pay for their rent, mortgage, childcare. So if I don't have enough cash, it presents a bit of an issue. So poverty, first and foremost, is a cash and inequitable, economic inequitable issue. It has always been, and currently we see that we're still on track for maintaining the same income inequality in this country that continues to separate the haves from the have-not. Now, based on qualitative and quantitative data and all the evidence and studies that span over 75 years, the best way to lift people out of poverty is to give them some money. Direct cash transfer assistance allow people to work with the dignity of earning a livable wage. But for now, to answer the question, is poverty a policy issue? Yes, absolutely. Poverty is a policy issue. Poverty isn't about character or just about character flaw. Isn't just about personal failure. It's not just about making, poor decisions or poor choices. As a matter of fact, most people will tell you, most people who live in poverty or have ever experienced poverty will tell you that they have very little control over the choices that they get to make. So really quickly, I'm going to take an advocacy or advocacy perspective, and I'm going to go through the 30,000 foot level, more of a macro level of, is poverty a policy choice? So I want to bring you back to about 50 years, and let's think about what has been happening in this country over the last 50 years. And I want to share with you 4 ways in which we know that policy choices not only reduce poverty, it increases economic security, and that organizations like the community action agencies, the 1,100 across the country, how we've been able to keep our lights on for 60 years, even through economic downturns and other unprecedented shifts in our governmental environment, we've been able to match that kind of service for the people that we serve. So number 1, successful economic security programs for 50 years we have been able to invest far longer and far stronger, and we do much more in those economic security programs to reduce poverty for the long term. So we've all talked about, and we know how important it is for every dollar that we invest in Head Start programs, that there's a $4 return on the investment. So we know that these programs for 75 years, 50 to 75 years, have proven great investments on our return. 2, economic policies show historic gains against poverty and in investments in households who just cannot afford housing, or maybe they can't afford adequate fooding for the whole family or other basic needs. And so these programs not only help them be able to achieve those basic necessities, but when we aggregate the data, we have proof that they also narrow racial gaps and disparities. And so we want to continue to invest in those ways that we know help keep people out of poverty. Number 3, the evidence to support economic and health insecurities through policies is insurmountable. We know what it does. For decades, we've been studying that the healthcare coverage, like Affordable Care Act and other Medicaid expansion and things like that, continue to create better outcomes in the long term for children and their families. And then lastly, investing in these safety net programs, investing in smart economic policies, help us to address structural and systemic barriers to needs for, certain populations or certain groups. So as an example, as the former a policy associate for Voices for Our Children, I remember back in 2006, maybe 2000, until about 2009. The NEKC Foundation invested in a series of documentaries and a toolkit called The Race Matters. And it included, briefs and practice guides and reports and presentations that consistently kept focusing on advancing racial equity for all children. And what it allowed us to do was to explore, for 50 years, how are we addressing some of those structural systemic racist, racial kinds of policies within our housing structures or within our employment structures. And so because of the nation's long history of racism and discrimination in jobs and housing and education, the studies allowed us a chance to kind of look at the differences in poverty rates among those different groups. So even while the nation's population saw a decrease in poverty in 2017, poverty rates were more twice high for Black and Latino families than some of our white families. So again, these are areas where investing in those economic security programs and being able to have that kind of conversation allows us a chance to continue to fight the war on poverty. So let's look at, again, this 50 years. The nation and the global studies, again, as I mentioned before, within 50 to 75 years, show that as we continue to invest in people, there's a greater opportunity for us to reduce poverty. So Bo mentioned previously the birth of community action agencies through the President Lyndon B. Johnson's executive order, the War on Poverty. And during that time of the Economic Opportunity Act of 1965, that social welfare program that President Johnson saw as a great need to be able to combat this war, looking at the high rises of percentage of poverty within our communities, was the goal to make America a much more equitable country and much more fair. And so community action agencies were created as safety net programs as a part of like Head Start and weatherization and those kind of programs that helped us be able to reduce poverty. So what we know for sure that happened during the 1960 Economic Opportunity Act is we saw a reduction in poverty from 9%, and then over the span of 2017, even increased to 47%, where we were able to successfully provide wraparound kind of services, economic supportive services such as SNAP, or income tax credit, child tax credit. I mean, just the child tax credit alone, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, in 2018, just alone, the Federal Earned Income Tax Credit program reported lifting nearly 5.6 million people out of poverty, and that includes 3 million children. So we know these programs work. We know that we see improved healthcare outcomes in infant and maternal health, improvements in household economic and social mobility, increasing the workforce participation and labor supply, which is another area that in 2025, we are still facing workplace shortage and childcare crisis. So these programs are important for us to consider investing. And then I'll just remind you that, as Bo mentioned, and just as recent as 2020, during the pandemic, we saw policymakers make that investment in hefty economic security policies that were targeted to those people in need. So again, an increase in SNAP benefits, expansion in EITC, expansion in the child tax credit, and then we even saw additional relief like the economic impact payments and things like that to kind of help our families through that crisis. So today, where are we today? So we're 37 years. I'm gonna skip all of that, but let's get to this. So now we're 37 days in the longest federal shutdown in our modern history. And now, of course, I won't torture you. I won't torture you with all of the all of the, raw economic effects and the things that we're seeing daily, even minute by minute. But I do want to remind you of some of the devastating effects to the cuts to the economic security, particularly, as Bo mentioned before, right here in Ohio, right here in our community. So we know that right now there are 37.9 million or 11.5 Americans who are living at or below the poverty level. And investing in those programs continue to show poverty rates skyrocket. So just as an example, Head Start. Head Start provides early learning, health, and nutrition services to approximately 716,000 children and families across the United States. And right here in Ohio, we have 59 Head Start programs serving 27,000 families in all 88 counties. We learned last week that 7 of our Head Start programs here in Ohio will be greatly impacted immediately from the federal cuts. 2 of the programs have managed to temporarily stay open while they figure out matching donations and community funding. And 5 of the programs are anticipating closure at the end of this month. That would mean a total of 3,738 Head Start children and families without access to childcare. That means waking up tomorrow morning and not knowing what I'm going to do to be able to provide childcare for my child. That also means an additional 940 Head Start staff who will be furloughed or laid off. So this is really hitting home And these policy implications have a strong impact in our community. Let's think about the SNAP program. Again, Bo mentioned 1.4 million Ohioans will wake up tomorrow, next week, without the thought of how am I going to be able to provide food for my families. Even with Governor DeWine's investment in $7 million last week and additional 10 of funds, it still doesn't go far enough to feed families who need their meals today. And then the last thing I'll mention is the community service block grants. CSBG is a federally funded, federal funds that enables communities like community action agencies to make local decisions about how we combat poverty. So many of our organizations, like Miami Valley Community Action Partnership, which you will hear from Erin Jeffries later, and Bo Chilton over at Impact Community Action Agency, they provide those weatherization programs. They provide very much needed workforce and career development so that we can match skilled workforce with vacancies. But without that CSBG funding, we're looking at cutting another 10,000 Ohioans from those kind of programs. We're looking at not being able to support another 6,000 Ohioans through our other career workforce development type of programs. So poverty is absolutely a policy choice. So where can we go? We do have ideas. I am looking forward to the question and answer, but let me give you just a few ideas to take with you before I close out. So this year alone, in May of earlier this year, Rise Together Innovation Institute here in Franklin County announced their Stabilized Families, a partnership with Community Shelter Board and others to guarantee income to local families who are unhoused. And so this is the kind of radical pushback that we need to have. This is the kind of radical advocacy and policy, anti-poverty policy efforts that we need to think about for the future of our workforce, for the future of our families. And so just the RISE Institute and some of those other organizations are looking at ways to explore cash direct assistance programs and other universal basic income. I encourage you to kind of look through it before. They also offered other programs through their Motherfold their Motherfold project, in which they provided $500 for single mothers to be able to assist with day-to-day necessities, childcare, and other needs for their families. And so right now we're still kind of monitoring these efforts through the Ohio State University to just kind of see the impact on direct cash assistance and being able to provide people with the kind of resources that they need to meet their income. But there's other ways that we could support the future of policy investments. One, just pay people. We need to continue to advocate for fair wages. I don't know why minimum wage isn't $35. What's the problem? Seriously, we're all just, I saw a meme the other day, we're probably all more one paycheck short of becoming a member of, or someone who needs assistance from the pantries than we are a billionaire. So again, let's think about if it is a little difficult for some of us, it must be difficult for all of us. We need to reinvest and promote federal economic security programs and services and other state-sponsored policies. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like post this administration. I don't know what that's going to look like even just in another 6 months. But we have some brilliant advocates in this state. We have some great leaders that we need to think about what will that reinvestment, what does that reimagining and shifting ideas around anti-poverty policy, what will that look like for the survival of our communities? We need to support more workforce career development programs, expand eviction prevention and mediation services. Bo mentioned the crowding that is happening in Franklin County, the housing crisis that is not just isolated to Central Ohio, but for the rest of the U.S. And so, how are we addressing those issues to be able to provide a safety net for those people who may just a flat tire? A flat tire may have put me in a bit of a pickle. Lastly, support national paid leave programs. I'm a new Mimi, you all, and I just don't understand why my granddaughter couldn't spend her first at least 6 months within the bosom of her mother, just enjoying life. We need to honor parenting. We need to honor childcare and support working families in ways that they need it the most, and that is to be able to have those child tax credits and be able to have the safety of parenting their children without the hustle and bustle of workforce. And then last, address ongoing structural and systemic policy barriers, including access to broadband, AI, and technology. I am jumping on board with some new AI teachings and learnings, and I am concerned about our constituents being left out of these discussions when we know that there are so many different iterations of AI bursting, telling different narratives and stories about what's happening within our communities. And so we need to also be the authors, we need to be creators and the developers of those conversations within broadband and technology to continue to support our communities. So the last thing I'll just say to you as I leave, and then I'm going to alley-oop it to my good friend Megan Riddlebarger, is, not so long, well, kind of so long ago, but not so long ago. You all cannot say that, I can say that, but almost 30 years ago, as a former single, young mother, those federal government programs really were a lifesaver for me when I needed the most. Receiving WIC benefits at a time when in the education, really helped improve my son's health outcomes for the long term. We had learned that my son had lead poison in his system, living in from old paint, chipped paint. Some of you parents may know what I mean by that, and they put everything in their mouth, and it was really bad. But because of WIC and the education and being able to access those kind of resources, we were able to combat that. And my son is one of the most intellectual and opinionated people ever, so clearly it helped. But having SNAP benefits, being able to utilize SNAP benefits while I was finishing my undergraduate degree and raising my son. And then, just later, he and I both are just great returns on your investment from Head Start. We are both former Head Start child, parent, and doing extraordinarily well. So again, policy is poverty is a policy choice. When we choose people over politics, we can absolutely eradicate poverty for future generations. We've been doing it for 50 years. And so we could continue to do it after we consider and reimagining what poverty and anti-poverty policies will look like moving forward. So again, thank you to Economic Mobility Alliance Ohio for having the community action agencies over. And I'm happy now to turn it over to my friend Megan.
Thanks, Yvonne. A lot of great information there. Once again, hard to follow. So I'll do my best. So first, I just want to acknowledge and appreciate that this webinar is a great illustration of what I see as our best bet for the future, and that is advocating in partnership. And so just today, you're seeing the live action advocacy partnership between the community action agencies serving the state of Ohio. And I am just really proud to be a part of this work and a part of this network. And so I just want to give you a little bit more information about COAD and where we come from. And I want to spend a little bit more time getting in the weeds of one particular policy choice that has a profound effect on keeping people in poverty. So a quick overview, the Corporation for Ohio Appalachian Development. We are a 51, 52, 53, getting older by the day, nonprofit. We were founded in way back in 1971 as a network of community action agencies. And I'll give you a little more detail over the next few slides, but here's a summary of our economic impact from our most recent annual report. We pay 96 people to do important work here at COAD, and that has economic impact in the communities we serve. These stars here on our logo represent all the places that we operate regional offices across the state of Ohio, one of which is located at the home of my friend Erin, who you'll hear from next. quick little history. We've been doing some grounding in history today. As you've heard now a couple times, we kind of trace our lineage back to the War on Poverty and President Lyndon Johnson's declaration, carrying forward the work of many others before him who were determined that the richest country in the world should not be the place where people suffer in poverty. And of course, the work continues. Specific to COAD, in 1971, we launched our AmeriCorps Seniors Program. We were first an association of community action agencies, and our first independently operated program was the Foster Grandparent Program, which I'm proud to say we still operate today, and with great hope for appropriations, we'll keep on operating it into the future. Then jumping ahead to 1981, we became Ohio's Credentialed Weatherization Training Center, a title that we proudly hold still today. We're one of 13 accredited weatherization training centers in the United States. We train over 1,000 people from across the state every year. And again, proud to note, we have training facilities here in our Athens campus in beautiful Southeast Ohio. And we also have 2 other training facilities that we operate in partnership with Community Action in Newark and another at Miami Valley Cap in Dayton. In 1993, we became the Child Care Resource and Referral Agency, serving 31 counties in Appalachian, Ohio. And that's where you'll hear a little bit more in a few minutes from me about those specific services, but it's all a part of our mission to improve the quality of life in Appalachian, Ohio. And last but not least of our program divisions, our Pathways Hub launched in 2022. And through it, we deploy community health workers to address maternal health and are proud to be partners with the Ohio Commission on Minority Health, who supports this work of the Pathways Hubs across the state of Ohio. I put a sunshine this year. We're about to go solar here at COAD. We'll have a solar installation going on our roof. We've added solar training to our training curriculum, and we have lots of other ideas about that. Hence, the future looking bright. We got to wear shades. Just to kind of bring back to the core of the conversation today around community action, COAD's founding was to be the 4th C in Ohio. We found that when we came up from little old Athens County, we weren't getting a lot of attention at the State House because our numbers weren't big enough. And because of our disparate population, we found we really had to stick together. So we've bound together 17 community action agencies, again, serving 30 counties. And we pass a lot of money through to those agencies here at COAD. Notably, we are the state's largest weatherization grantee, and we administer that funding on out, and our community action agencies implement those programs. We also have a scholarship fund, and our Pathways Hub is the newest version of the opportunity we have as a hub to bring in funding and get it out to community action. Oh, it went backwards. There we go. So I gave you the history perspective, and here's just a little more detail of the work that COAD does ourselves alongside our community action agency partners across our divisions. Our COAD for Kids division, our Pathways Hub, our Energy Services division, and our AmeriCorps Seniors. And each one of those programs, loud and clear, answers the question, is poverty a policy choice? Yes, in fact, it is. What people pay for energy is a policy choice. How people access health care is a policy choice. And how people access child care is a policy choice. And I'm here to tell you that all of those could use a little work, so I'm grateful for the partnership and advocacy that we have going now to hopefully improve as many of those systems as we can. And I wanted to take the opportunity to do a quick but deep dive into the issue of child care providers who themselves, thanks to policy choices, are very much living in poverty. So I want to just give you a quick primer on what childcare in Ohio looks like. We operate as the resource and referral agency supporting all of these childcare providers. There are a variety of types of childcare providers, and therefore a variety of ways people access resources to access them. So there are 2 subsidies currently for families who are making not enough money to live on. Somehow they can get help with childcare. Clearly not enough help. And what this ends up becoming is a real bad access problem. So here in Appalachian, Ohio, what you see is a lot of people waiting to access childcare. In our entire 31 county footprint, we have 231 centers, of which about half only operate part-time. We've got 282 preschools. Those serve kids 9 months of the year for about 6 hours of the day. And we've got a lot of hardworking family child care providers who serve children and families in their own homes and are licensed by the state of Ohio to do so. Pretty simple. If people could make a living providing childcare, we would not have the supply problem that we have today. So the message I hope you'll take away here is that we really need to work hard to ensure that our childcare providers can make a living providing probably one of the most important services there is in the working population today. So just to give you a little granularity on what the current state is, the average rate of pay for childcare providers in urban and in rural Ohio, we got a really bad turnover problem. What we are hearing lately from our providers is that the PFCC or subsidy rate is substantially lower than what they have to charge private pay families just to be able to pay their staff. And unfortunately, that puts additional strain on those private pay families, and many of them are struggling to pay the bill. As I'm sure you've heard, it costs about the same amount to put a child in infant childcare for a year as it does to send one to college. And there's a lot of policy choices going on there. So a couple of expansion issues that are really concrete and physical. Even when there are resources given to try to expand childcare providers are expected to themselves invest in expanding their facilities. So adding a room or adding additional furniture to accommodate a new age group is a real challenge for people who have no margin. And so a lot more investment is required to really support those people running small businesses and doing the best they can to take care of all of us. Infant toddler expansion in particular is challenging. Just an economic fact, as more and more public preschools have opened alongside the elementary schools, we have pulled those preschoolers out of traditional private care settings and bankrupted them. It costs a lot more to care for infants and toddlers, and often providers were able to make their costs by providing care for a large number of preschool-age children. And when those preschool-age children exit the market, the math just doesn't work. So what can we do? We need to pay people better. I think you might hear this a lot from all of us. As Yvonne eloquently stated, the minimum wage is not enough. There are ways, though, besides just money, that we could think about making life better for our childcare providers, specifically benefits. Having childcare providers have access to the most basic of benefits like childcare subsidy, perhaps health care, perhaps even retirement, perhaps being treated like state employees and having access to those benefits. I got no end of ideas for things that might not just require more money coming from the system into private businesses, but could offset the cost of doing that private business, such as investment in infrastructure, making it more affordable for providers to operate their businesses in their facilities would be really helpful, would go a long way to be able to reinvest into higher wages and better working conditions for the folks in doing this beautiful yet very challenging work. So that was my deep dive, and I'm trying to keep us on time here. We also launched a podcast back to our weatherization program services. There are some links to follow if you want to learn more about our energy services, and the most recent episode in particular is about our Going Solar. That is the quick COAD overview and particular emphasis on childcare policy. I'd like to thank you all for your time and attention, and I look forward to hearing next from my friend Erin over at Miami Valley Community Action. Thank you. Trying to unshare.
Well, this gives me an opportunity to thank Megan and to thank Bo and to thank Yvonne and Travis for all of the great work that we're doing today and just being able to partner on this presentation. Thank you so much for being here. As Megan said, we are a little bit let's see. I can't share yet. Oh, there we go. We are a little bit behind time. We hope you can stay on with us, but we understand if you do need to depart. But we're very grateful that you're here. My name is Erin Jeffries. I am the president and the CEO of Miami Valley Community Action Partnership. And today, as you know, we're exploring a question that really goes to the heart of our work and our country's values. Is poverty a policy choice? Because when we look closely, if we look at the policies that expand opportunity and those that restrict it, we see that economic mobility doesn't just happen. It's built or blocked by the choices that we make together. So allow me to share a little bit about our agency. We are the community action agency that serves Montgomery, Greene, Darke, and Preble counties. We also serve an additional 5 counties in West Central Ohio with our weatherization services. And we've been serving this region since 1964 through programs that help families meet immediate needs while building long-term stability. We offer a variety of programs in our local community. Some of them are listed here on this slide. But every single day, our team sees what happens when policy works and when it doesn't. When a family keeps the heat on through our winter crisis program, or when a survivor of violence finds safety through our shelter, we see how public policy translates into real outcomes for real people. Poverty doesn't happen in isolation. It's shaped by systems, structures, and the policies that govern them. When we narrow who benefits, we underinvest in our shared future. As the author Heather McGee, who wrote the book The Sum of Us, explains, some communities across America in the 1950s literally drained their public swimming pools rather than share access after integration orders. In trying to exclude a few, they took away an amenity from everyone, from the entire community. Policies that drain the pool of public goods, like safe housing, quality schools, or infrastructure, weaken entire communities. But when we invest broadly, we can all move forward together. At MVCAP, we see those dots connect every single day. When utility costs rise faster than wages, or when a housing shortage forces family to choose between rent and food, those aren't just personal struggles. They're outcomes of policy decisions. Community action was founded and exists to bridge those gaps, to turn short-term relief into long-term results. Our programs are proof that when we act together, we can turn exclusion into shared opportunity. And that's why agencies like MVCAP, COAD, Impact, OUCAN, EMAO, that's why these organizations are so incredibly vital. We connect good policy design to real outcomes in our community, making sure that working families can actually use the tools intended to help them. I want to give an example of a policy in Dayton that has long-lasting effects. So back in the 1940s, the Federal Homeowners Loan Corporation had some maps where they labeled a lot of West Dayton as hazardous for lending. And that designation wasn't based on property condition. It was based on who lived there. That single policy decision drew invisible lines that still shape opportunity today. It limited access to mortgages, investment, insurance, and it set the stage for decades of disinvestment and declining wealth. When families were denied access to fair lending, their neighborhoods faced generations of decline, And in the 1990s and the 2000s, history repeated itself. The same neighborhoods that were hazardous for lending in the 40s were targeted with some subprime loans. And many of the borrowers who took those subprime loans actually qualified for prime rates, but were steered into higher cost loans. Federal deregulation weakened the oversight that allowed predatory lending to flourish. The result was foreclosures, lost equity, and a reduced tax base. Losses that ripple through our schools, our infrastructure, and our local economies to this day. You can still see the footprint in aging housing stock, in lower appraisals, and in higher energy burdens. And that's why programs like weatherization and home repair aren't just about saving money. They're about restoring value that was stripped away. And this is proof that smart and locally guided policy can reverse long-term harm. And this is where we begin to see how smart, inclusive policy becomes an engine for growth in our communities. When we design programs that invest in every person's potential, not just those who are already thriving, we get a measurable return on investment for our communities. Exclusion carries a cost, but collaboration produces a return. When we invest together, everyone benefits. And at MVCAP, we call this the collaboration dividend. It's the measurable gains that come when public, private, and nonprofit partners work together. Shared investment creates stronger results. Cross-sector coordination reduces costs. Local collaboration builds trust and resilience. Investing in everyone's potential isn't ideology. It's smart, results-driven policy. It's how we maximize public investment, leverage private sector participation, and strengthen working families. And the numbers back this up. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, every dollar that's invested in weatherization programs in our community generates about $1.72 in energy and health benefits for those consumers. But when you include the broader community impacts, that return more than doubles. It's more like a 4% return on a $1 investment. That right there is efficiency, accountability, and innovation at work. Political choices shape the systems that affect health, housing, and opportunity in our communities. There are three levers that impact, three levers of impact that determine whether a policy succeeds or fails. First is decision-making. Who is at the table when those decisions are made and whose voices are being heard? Government capacity, whether public systems are equipped to deliver these programs effectively, and policy design, how the programs are structured, funded, and measured. When these three align, communities thrive. This framework was adapted from Daniel Dawes, who wrote the book Political Determinants of Health, and shows that equity and efficiency are not opposites, they're complementary. Dawes reminds us that that the barriers we see in housing, health, and economic mobility are rarely accidental. They're the predictable outcomes of political decisions. And his message echoes what we see in community action every single day. If politics can create inequity, it can also create opportunity if we choose it. We see every day how thoughtful policy design translates into real results. LIHEAP flexibilities at the federal level, that's our low-income home energy assistance program. Those flexibilities allow states to streamline assistance without new funding by using categorical eligibility and data sharing to cut paperwork and help more households faster. Weatherization, right off the bat, lowers utility bills by up to 30% while supporting local contractors, which keeps those dollars in our local economy. Our housing and domestic violence programs help families rebuild stability and move towards self-sufficiency. And during the current federal government shutdown, I really want to shout out to the state of Ohio. They have modeled strong leadership for all of us. Rather than reducing or delaying the Winter Crisis Program, which is our utility assistance program, which helps families avoid disconnection during the winter season, they have reallocated funding from a related grant to ensure uninterrupted assistance. This success only happened because the state trusted local partners like MVCAP, Impact, COAD, other community action agencies to deliver efficiency with accountability and with compassion. That right there is the power of coordinated anti-bureaucratic problem solving, the kind that gets results. So if we look at data, behind every data point, there's a real person. Tracy, who was once a guest in our shelter, now manages that shelter, and she's helping others rebuild stability and hope. When she tells a new guest, "I've been where you are," she turns policy into purpose. Anne, who was once at risk for eviction, used MVCAP's support to become a homeowner. When she signed the papers, she told our team, "I finally feel secure." Those stories are reminders that policy is most powerful when it empowers people. When designed well, it doesn't create dependency. It creates dignity. But the opposite is often true. When policy is unstable, families feel it first. So the government shutdown has had a lot of impact on our community. Part of that is some layoffs at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees a very important program in our communities, Community Services Block Grant. Some of my colleagues mentioned that earlier. This is the nation's most flexible tool for expanding opportunity and promoting self-sufficiency. CSBG provides local control, which allows communities to respond quickly, effectively, and with accountability. So when that stability is threatened, the impact is immediate. Agencies rely on consistent guidance to plan and deliver services. Families depend on timely access to those services. So policy instability doesn't just disrupt programs, it disrupts lives. So how do we move forward? We empower communities to shape the policies that affect them. We strengthen partnerships across public, private, and nonprofit sectors. We invest in people, in education, skills, stability, and mobility, and We design systems for resilience and accountability. Our Community Action Network was founded on the belief that local communities know what works. And as we face new challenges from automation, AI, climate change, we have the same opportunity our founders had to design policy that meets people where they are and moves them forward. That's how we honor this mission, expanding economic opportunity for all Americans, regardless of race, creed, or background. So is poverty a policy choice? Yes, it is, because we write the rules that shape opportunity. When we choose shared investment, we strengthen our communities. When we choose inclusion, we expand prosperity. And we choose to see every person's potential as part of our shared success, we all move forward together. Let's choose shared prosperity. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Holy smokes. Thank you, everyone. This has been an incredibly informative time together. I know that you are all hungry for this information because you stuck in there with us. I know that I personally learned a lot about this topic and some of the incredible work being done across our state. Bo, Yvonne, Megan, Erin, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your passion, your concerns, and your calls to action with all of us. And I just want to close us out by saying I'd really like to ask everyone to think about one thing that you will do after logging off of this webinar. Not something that you might do or something that you want to do, but something that you can really commit to. Even if that something is to commit to continuing your learning journey, to read more and learn more about anti-poverty policies, or watch the Dark Money Game documentary that Bo mentioned. The war on poverty needs all of us in this fight together. So on behalf of Economic Mobility Alliance Ohio, I want to thank you for attending this webinar and helping us to spread the word about this critical work. Thank you, everyone. Make it a great day.